running in place on almost every subject. Banking regulation, on the economy, initial jobless claims are kind of stalled out. QE3, what will the Fed do? Greece, will or will not stay in the euro? A lot of running in place and going nowhere. Yeah. Am I missing something, or am I being too boring?
No. I didn't realize we're going to be that holistic.
Oh, we're going big picture, Neal.
I mean, you know,
we're going big picture. You're one of the few guys around here that can go big picture.
I appreciate that. I think you're essentially right, except Greece. In other words, everything's been going slow motion. The Eurozone crisis, obviously years old at this point, but I think with the Greek election coming up soon, that the stalling and the crawling around and the muddling through comes to a head.
Comes to a head.
But you're right. I think in a macro sense, from the United States perspective, it's as if we're running in deep sand.
Now, is that a bad thing? And what I mean by that is the following. I think most people, astute observers like yourself, would basically say, look, we have this huge debt bubble. We're in the process of a huge amount of deleveraging going on, improvement of corporate balance sheets, U.S. companies, especially the global multinationals, as well run, as profitable as they've ever been. You got big structural problems in Europe, maybe in China. Isn't this kind of the best we could possibly hope for right now? All these dreams about the stock market going to the ceiling, or that real estate suddenly going to jump back and prices jump 10%, 15% a year, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with you, and especially in this sense, is that, you know, especially with the QE3, you know, waiting for Godot argument there, is at some point we have to get off artificial stimulus, right? But it's easier for us to say that than for the groups of people, if we just talk about the United States, you know, the kids graduating from college, the people who, you know, who have been unemployed now for years and whose skills are eroding. That's really where the danger is, that there are large numbers of people who this sort of stuck in the mud, if you will, even if some positive long-range things are happening, those groups really could suffer for, you know, decades or years at a minimum.
But wouldn't you argue, or I'm going to argue, that there's very little, at least the Fed can do about them, and they've kind of done plus or minus what they can. And there are very deep structural problems with the U.S. economy, and certainly with the global economy, things that will take years and years to fix. You know, for example, the national debt here in the U.S., you know, we're not going to solve the problems of overspending in Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security right away. That's going to take years to kind of work our way through. So in the scheme of things, maybe kind of running in place is about it as well as we're going to do. I know it's not very ambitious, but maybe it's the best we could do. You talked about Greece. You think that may be some kind of trigger. What do you think is going to happen?
I think that one of two things are going to happen. One is that Greece does have to withdraw with the various speculative but ultimately unknown consequences of that, or that a more benign restructuring has to take place. And I would hope that had a real quid pro quo for liberalizing not only the Greek economy, and this is just, you know, best sky, pie in the sky kind of thing, but liberalizing the European economies in general. And this goes to your point, that there are huge structural problems, both debt overhang and, one would say, not enough incentive for capitalist creativity, both frankly in the U.S., but even more so in Western Europe. And that's, as you say, where the problems lie. And if the political will is not there, and there's no evidence that it is, to address that, then I'm afraid you're right, that we've muddling through with slow growth is perhaps the best scenario.
Final question, Neal Lipschutz. Angela Merkel is doing a good, not so good, or bad job of holding the line and forcing the rest of Europe to restructure instead of basically having the German taxpayer bail them out. Good, bad, not so good.
Okay.
Neal, put your foot down.
I'm going to just go somewhere else.
I knew you were going to go somewhere else.
All right, somewhere.
I gave you three choices.
Okay. The problem is, I think the talk is wrong. In other words, I think...
my question is wrong.
Well, in other words, I think Germany's too limited in the choices they're giving. In other words, an almost broader vision, even though they have talked about more unification of politics, but even a broader vision that, like I said, is sort of less harsh in the short run, but requires real structural change in the longer run, maybe would work better. But it's tough. Everybody's got their own domestic politics to care about.
I think that is a Panglossian solution that will not happen. Neal Lipschutz, thank you very much for being here on Main Street.